The woman in your life who will do what she must do to comfort you and calm you down and let you rest now. The woman in your life, she can rest so easily.
Hello everybody and welcome to Women's Spaces. My name is Elaine Holtz and I'm your host, and as always I am so excited about today's show. Why? Because I have a special guest with me by the name of Carolyn Banuelos, and she is the volunteer coordinator for the living room. And as we get into the program, we're going to have a surprise announcement. I don't want to say anything yet, but Caroline has something so interesting to tell us during this interview. But before I start, I have a little commentary I'd like to make. The first thing is I want to recommend a book. And you know, this is Women's Spaces, but every once in a while a gentleman comes along that really does something that really hits me profoundly. And that's a new book by Jimmy Carter, actually President Jimmy Carter. And the book is called Our Endangered Values. And what I liked about the book particularly is because he's looking at our values. Like, what are our values? Money, love, compassion, war. I mean, what are our values when you start thinking about it? And President Carter in this book here, I'm going to flash it again, he really addresses issues that I think all of us need to talk about, particularly since we call ourselves a Christian nation. And you know, if we're going to call ourselves a Christian nation, we have to remember that the person that we are supposed to be honoring under the Christian banner is Christ. And his message was, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God." Now that's a very, very interesting concept. You know, when you think about it, blessed are the peacemakers. Well, are we bringing peace to the world? I mean, that's a value we have to look at. And another thing that we have to look at is, what does it mean to love your neighbor as yourself? I myself believe that loving your neighbor as yourself means, if I love myself, that means I want good food, I want good water, I want a good life for my children. Well, if I love my neighbor as myself, then I want the same thing for my neighbor. And if my neighbor is loving themselves and me at the same time, then we both want the good life for each other. It's not that complicated, folks. You know, so we really need to think about that, and that's what President Carter is addressing. And then before we go into the interview, I want to make a few announcements. The first thing is, let's talk about the Peace Press. I love the Peace Press. It's put out every other month by the Peace and Justice Center, and I just happened to have an article in there called One Woman's Perspective. And it was really exciting that I actually got it published, and what I'm doing is comparing war zones with natural disasters. And the conclusion I come to is, we can't control Mother Earth, we can't control the atmosphere, but we certainly can control wars. We can make a decision whether we want to have them or not have them. And in my mind, let's stop, if you know what I mean. And one last announcement that I'm really excited about, and that's the 14th Annual Progressive Festival that's happening Sunday, September 25th. It's a free festival. It's put on by the Peace and Justice Center in Petaluma, and we've got some exciting guests. Helen Kellicott's going to be there, and it's so important that we hear her message, particularly today, what's going on with Fukushima, oh, I hope I pronounced that right, and all the other things around nuclear energy and nuclear warfare. Another person that's going to be there is one of my favorite men in the whole world, and that's Daniel Ellsberg. As you know, he was the one from the Pentagon Papers. And then Cindy Sheehan. And what's so fascinating about Cindy Sheehan is she's a mother who lost her son in the Iraq War. And what she's done is been speaking out so no other mother will have to go through the pain that she went through. And then the final thing is the San Francisco Mime Troupe. And if you haven't seen them, you have not experienced what I consider true entertainment. So remember that date, September 25th. It's from 11:30 to 5 o'clock in Petaluma by, I think it's D Street. Anyway, there's a lot to think about and a lot of good stuff going on in our community. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce my guest, Carolyn Banuelos. Carolyn, welcome to Women's Spaces.
Thank you for having me, Elaine. I'm really happy to be here.
Oh, I know. It's really exciting to have you. And let me tell my viewers a little bit about you. Just take a second here. Carolyn has been with the Living Room since January 2008. And by the way, when I first met Caroline was when she was running for the city council a few years ago. And I was so disappointed that I didn't meet her in time to give her a little bit more support. And that's why I'm very excited about the announcement she's going to make on Women's Spaces. She is the volunteer coordinator for the Living Room, and it's a very small staff. She's also the media person. She wears many, many hats. And also she's on our planning commission. So anyway, welcome, Carolyn. Welcome to Women's Space.
Thank you, Elaine.
And you know, the way I like to start the show out is anything my viewers would like to tell, anything you'd like to tell our viewers about yourself. And what's really interesting, just a little side note, folks, Carolyn and I were both born in East Los Angeles. Actually, rumor has it that her mother and I went to the same high school, which is Roosevelt High School. So I just think that's just an amazing piece of history.
Yeah.
Well, anything you'd like to tell us, Caroline, just be my guest.
Oh, well, thank you, Elaine. Well, I think you said a lot of it already. I've been with the Living Room since January 2008. I do wear a lot of hats. I do a lot of the social media work as well and the general operations of the organization. So I do a lot of things as far as the Living Room is concerned, and as you mentioned, I'm also a Santa Rosa Planning Commissioner. I've been active in the civic world for a long time. I was born in East Los Angeles, as you noted, and came up here in 1983, and I just love Sonoma County and Santa Rosa in particular, and I love my job at the Living Room.
Well, you know, Caroline, I've been doing a lot of research about the Living Room, and I was just amazed at all the programs they have. I mean, they have a daycare center for women. They have a mother and child program. They have pathways to case management programs, helping people with transitions, just all kinds of wonderful things going on there.
True.
And I think it's a community-supported program.
Oh, absolutely. About 60% of our money, our funding, comes from individual donors in the community. It's so heavily supported by the community here. If it
I mean, that shows what our community is really like.
Absolutely.
Well, let's get into the interview and let's talk about the Living Room. What is it that the Living Room, and what services do you provide?
Wonderful questions. The Living Room is a daytime drop-in center for women and children who are homeless. We're the place when the nighttime shelters close in the mornings and they don't have anywhere to go. We are the place that they come to. And we provide services specifically during the day, because truly when the night shelters close, they don't have any place to go.
Can you explain that a little bit better? I didn't know there was a difference between night shelters and day shelters.
Sure.
And that these specific programs are geared towards homeless. Can you explain them a little bit?
Absolutely. Well, there are shelters all over Sonoma County, but they're open at night. They're places for folks who are homeless to go to and sleep at night. And there wasn't really very many services for people during the day. And, you know, often people will say, well, why don't they get a job, or why don't they get housing? You really need a place to do that. You need a place to go make phone calls. You need a place to search the internet. You know, you need a place to kind of find your bearings, and many of these folks don't have laptops, so they come to the Living Room. We do have phones. They can get their mail. They can use computers and go on the internet and do job searches and housing searches. So that's what we're there for. We're a safe place for women and children. We only serve women and children to come to during the day from 8:30 to 1:30 Monday through Friday.
You know, I have a curious question, since you're working so close. And when you say homeless women and children, how many are in that category? You know, can you give me a percentage of in Sonoma County?
Right. Well, when I say homeless women and children, we serve both adult homeless women who maybe have their children are school age and they're in school. Some of them, their children are grown, but they're homeless. But we also serve women who have infants, toddlers, preschoolers with them. So we serve both. I can't give you an exact number because we're a drop-in center and we serve any number of people on a given day, because that's the nature of the work that we do. People just drop in.
You know, Caroline, I cannot imagine what it must feel like to be a mother who has a child that's homeless. Can you just give a little example of some of the psychology? I mean, it just breaks my heart when I think of that.
Yeah. Oh, you know, you hit the nail on the head, Elaine. I think there was a recent study that just came out, like I'm going to say just a couple of days ago, about the fact that 1 in 5 children is in poverty right now. So that is what we're all about. I mean, the fastest growing segment of homeless within the homeless population is families. So that's families with children. It is really, when you think about it, how hard it is to raise children to begin with. And then if you are homeless and you don't have any stability in your life, and you have a lot of trauma, a lot of stress, because you're not really sure where you're going to sleep that night. You know, many of our folks are in shelters. Some of them live in cars. Some of them are encampments. All of those things, if you put all those things together, that makes for a very stressful situation for both mother and child.
You know, when you think about our country, one of the richest countries in the world, has this issue. You know, I want to remind my viewers of something that's very, very interesting to me. When I did this article on One Women's Perspective, one of the things that I did was I did an analysis on the cost of war. And if people want to do something like that, they can go on to www.costofwar.com, and it's all there. And this is as of July 11th. I believe it's August 19th today. The total cost of war since 2001. Now, the numbers are so big I can't even say them.
Oh,
$1,219,246,461,565. I mean, folks, imagine all the homes for these children we could build and all the food we can put on their table. I mean, really, it's something to think about. Well, you know, I mean, what are some other challenges that these women have? I mean, just to find a place to be in the daytime.
Affordable house. Well, yes. If you are homeless, you don't have anywhere to go during the day, and that's how the living room started. Actually, the Church of Incarnation started the living room in 1993 because they saw that there were women and children kind of wandering the streets of downtown Santa Rosa with no place to go during the day. And you know, sometimes it's raining, sometimes it's very cold. As you know, especially right now, people don't really want them in the libraries. You know, all of that. You know, they have no place to go. And where are they going to eat? You know, while they have no place to go and they have no money really. So that's what we provide. We provide a safe place for them to go. We provide services. As I said, they can get their mail there. We give them toiletries. We have classes, groups. We have people come in and give presentations on different issues such as domestic violence, affordable housing, how to apply for it, all those things that, you know, it's really hard work to be poor and not have a home. You're always worried about where you're going to be the next day, where you're going to be that night. How are you going to get services? How are you going to get any medical care? All of those things are extremely difficult to obtain. You know, you have to fill out a lot of paperwork. There's a lot of bureaucracy. In some instances, to apply for medical care, for example, you have to reapply every 6 months to show that you're still in your same situation. All of that creates such stress for them. It's a huge challenge.
Oh, God, I had no idea of all that. I mean, that's just amazing to me. Can you give me an idea of what age range are the children? I mean, and what education, what group? You know, where do these women fall, and what type are there some that come from very poor working class families, educated women?
We have the whole spectrum. I always say we have women who never finished high school, all the way up to women who have master's degrees. And particularly now in this downward economy, we have many folks who've lost their homes due to foreclosure and are homeless for the very first time. So we have the whole spectrum. In terms of the ages of the children, during the school year, you know, children, even if you're homeless, you're required to be in school. So those kids have to be in school if the government knows about them, basically. And so during the school year, we have infants and pregnant women up through preschoolers. And then when school is out for summer or any kind of vacations, Thanksgiving, Christmas, we have all ages.
Oh, you know something, Caroline, I have to say, I mean, just from my own perspective as a woman, hearing this, I mean, I'm so glad that you folks are there, for heaven's sakes. I mean, the community should support it, not 1,000%, but 10,000%. But it's still heartbreaking. it's heartbreaking to hear this. It's heartbreaking to know that little infants are homeless. I mean, what does that say for the future of our children? I mean, it's so interesting.
That's why the book that you brought out about with Jimmy Carter is so timely, because it's all about our priorities and whether or not we're a moral country.
I know. I mean, and you know, we don't think of it in those terms. You know, we're so busy defending that what we're doing rather than sitting down and saying, wait a minute, maybe we can rethink these things. Maybe we can do things a little bit better. And above all, we need to take care of our children because they're the future. And the mothers, you know, there's that old saying, the hand that rocks the cradle. I mean, that's determining the future. So it's really interesting. Well, can you give our viewers some idea of how do you deliver these services? I mean, do you give them meals? I mean, is there a set time? How do you deliver them?
Well, we're there over at the Church of Incarnation on their grounds, on their campus, Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 1:30. So anyone that needs services is welcome to come. We do an intake. We have a very small staff, but we have over 100 volunteers, and on any given day, you'll see many volunteers helping us provide all these services. I mean, that's how we do it. We have volunteers who do the cooking. And right now, we're doing 2 meals a day, although due to funding cuts, which I hope we'll talk about in a little bit, we're moving to 1 meal, which is really a huge thing for us because we've been known to be able to provide both breakfast and lunch.
Oh my goodness, I mean, a big deal to serve 2 meals, and now you have to worry, or, you know, so what are some of your funding challenges? I mean, number one, how do you go about doing funding? Do you have fundraisers? What are some of the things that you do?
Well, because of the funding cuts, both government funding and just having a hard time raising funds, we've had to step up our, looking for more private grants. That's what everyone's doing. And looking for other funding sources, and also stepping up our fundraisers. We're doing a fundraiser this month, one called the Literary Loop. It's on August 30th. Then we have another fundraiser in September. It's our annual wine event, which will be September 18th over at the Fieldstone Winery. And then in November, we do a play over at 6th Street Playhouse. I mean, we have to keep raising funds because of all the cuts that are on the horizon right now.
Well, you know, I just want to let my viewing audience know that I will announce this, the November fundraiser at the end of the show. Unfortunately, the show will not be on where I can mention the other fundraisers, but there will be information on the living room if you want to get in touch with Caroline, or if you want to donate. I mean, I think it's a very worthwhile cause personally.
Thank you.
Well, you know, I'd like to ask you another question here. It is, you know, how... You know, I see that you go out looking for a lot of funding with foundations and different grants and for the community. How does that fend for you? I mean, is that a difficult task? Is that an easy task?
As an organization, of course it's a challenge. We're competing with a lot of other nonprofits to do the same thing. They all need funding as well. The grant process is a complicated process. Every grant is different. They ask for different things at different criteria. You have to meet all that criteria in order to get the grant. And you're competing with other organizations, so you have to prove that your need is as big as anyone else's. So yeah, it's a real challenge. In this economy, it's been a huge challenge, and which I understand. You know, a lot of people are suffering right now.
But you know something, it's really interesting as you're talking, and I know you're such an upbeat person. How do you keep yourself centered with, I mean I'm just listening to it and it's breaking my heart. I mean, you're actually seeing it. How do you keep yourself going?
Oh gosh, I think, you know, one of the things that we work on as a staff is self-care. You know, it's really important because we deal with so many different situations and we see a lot of sad cases. There's no question how difficult the work is from day to day. You know, we have mental health, folks with mental health issues, folks with domestic violence issues, substance abuse, you know, all of it, or someone, like I said, who's been foreclosed on for the first, you know, and is homeless for the first time. When you look at that on a day-to-day basis, it's very hard to see day after day because there's only so much that we can do because of the funding that we have and the staff that we have. But self-care, you know, exercise, you know, vacation, you know, all those things that people do to take care of themselves. Our executive director really stresses that we do those things so that we're able to deal with these things on a day-to-day basis.
And also, you're being an example for the women. If you keep yourself fit, because I imagine in my own mind when you go through a period where you have to be homeless. I can't remember a day when I've ever been hungry, let alone not have a bed to sleep in.
Right.
That there must be all the psychology of it must just be horrendous. That you have to keep yourself focused and moving and upbeat.
Yes.
Well,
yes.
it sounds like a fabulous program, and I hope this interview will help you get a few donations and a few other things, and I really appreciate you being here explaining it. Now I'd like to move into just a little bit another phase of the program, and that is, I guess we have a surprise announcement that we're going to make today. And so I would like you to be my guest and just say whatever it is that you'd like to say.
Well, thank you, Elaine. And thank you for, first of all, let me say thank you for letting me come on here and talk about the living room, because it's so important to the community and to the women and children that we serve. So thank you for that. My surprise announcement, which was probably not a huge surprise, is that I'm running for Santa Rosa City Council in 2012. And I just filed with my intent to do that, and I'm starting to put all the pieces together to make that happen, and I'm very excited about it.
Well, I'm excited about it too, but I'd just like you to tell my women viewers, what is motivating you to run? This is your second time. Wasn't the first time enough?
Actually, this is my third time.
Oh, three is the charm.
Three's a charm, I hope. A lot of people ask me that. I really, and in this really downturned economy, with so many challenges, and I watch the council week after week, and I know whether I agree with what they're doing or not, or certain individuals or not, I know they're all trying to do the best that they can do for the city. And I just feel that I have a lot to offer and can help them in that process. It's very challenging right now, since there is no funding at the national level, as we know, at the state level, and at the local level. So finding creative ways to get through all of this is why I'm doing it. And I love helping people, and I think that I have a lot to offer the community.
Well, it's interesting you talk about funding. I was reading, and I don't have the exact information, but that there was a mayor's council that actually was requesting that we bring some of our war dollars home, so some of the communities can at least get more funding.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, I think that was Antonio Verragosa over in LA was really pushing for that. I think he's absolutely right. Many folks think it's time for us to put our dollars back here. We've got so much work to do, and we really can't afford to neglect our young folks right now and the future of our country. So,
back again to Jimmy Carter's book, we have to start looking at our values, and that we, our endangered values, because, we have strong values in this country.
Yes.
Well, Caroline, congratulations. I support you 100%. And anything that you feel, I know it always surprises people when I say this, but I'd like you to go ahead and look at that camera. Anything that's in your heart about the living room, about your challenge of running for city council, anything that you feel comfortable talking about.
Okay. Well, first and foremost, I want to say, again, thank you for having me and letting me come on here and talk about the living room. If anyone's interested in the living room, please go to our website, www.thelivingroomsc.org. There is a PayPal there. You can donate to us, and we would love to have you. We also are on Facebook. Look for us on Facebook as well. With respect to my campaign, of course, I'm looking for help. I'm going to win this time, and I'm very confident about that. And I really think that I have a lot to offer the city, and so I hope that the residents of the city are going to let me have a chance to do that.
Well, Caroline, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being on Women's Spaces, and I want to wish you the best of luck with your campaign, and I really hope this show helps bring some donations and some volunteers into the living room. And I will have all the information at the end of the show, how to get in touch with you and how to get in touch with the living room. And as I do at the end of every show, I say, wow. That's all I can say is wow. Because it's so interesting to me that here we are, one of the richest nations on this planet, and we have infants, women with infants that are homeless, school-age children with their mothers that are homeless, and they may only get one meal during a day. I mean, come on, folks. We have to do something. This is not right. I mean, I feel very blessed. I've never missed a meal in my life, but I definitely have great compassion for any woman out there with a child that doesn't have a home to live, that doesn't have a stove to cook on. You know, I was so insulted when I was watching the television the other night and they said the poor have refrigerators. I mean, for God's sakes, we're in the United States. We should all have a refrigerator. We should all have a home and a stove and a nice warm bed to sleep in. I mean, it's just appalling to me. And like I do at the end of every show, I try to encourage, particularly my women viewers, get off your duff and do something for peace. Do something for the children. You know, there's some simple things you can do. You know, the Peace and Justice Center, I want to show you this. This here is just a long list of all the different organizations in our county and our city that you can get involved in. You know, and the very least you can do is write a letter. Write a letter to the editor. Write a letter to your President of the United States. Write a letter to your Congress people. Write a letter to your local people. And make one simple suggestion. This is so simple. And that is, before they write that important bill, before they take that important vote, they ask one simple question. Is it good for the children? If it's not, let's not do it. Why? Because if it's not good for the children, it's not good for the future. And folks, just like all of you out there watching, you all want a future for your children, for your grandchildren, just like I want a future for my children and my grandchildren. Anyway, lots to think about. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for watching. And this is Elaine Holtz with Women's Spaces saying, I am looking forward to seeing you the next time.
The woman in your life will do what she must do to comfort you and calm you down and let you rest now. The woman in your life, she can rest so easily. She knows everything you